Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. Hopefully your Friday has been absolutely outstanding. It is great to be here and to be with you. We've got some good updates as we close out the week. We have Fulton County. The battle over the ballots continues on, and the DOJ not playing around anymore. They say no more negotiations. We want this solved, and they're demanding now that the court rule in their favor and dismiss this case after a failed meet and confer. We'll unpack all the latest and see what's going on from some Georgia politicians who are out there running for election right now. Then we'll turn our attention over to ActBlue. You know this company, you've heard a lot about them. They've raised and processed billions of dollars for Democrats, and there has been a long-running concern that maybe they were taking money from foreign lands, from foreigners, to influence our politics in America. Not allowed to do that. They told Congress that they were not doing that, and their own lawyers internally have a different story to tell. So there is turmoil. They call it a meltdown. New York Times reporting on it, and the new AG now being asked about what his plans are for prosecuting and bringing justice to the biggest fraudsters, perhaps in the Democratic Party, ActBlue. And then we also saw in California, there was a roundup of a bunch of hospice fraudsters. One guy in particular stole millions of dollars, is the allegation from the DOJ. We'll see exactly what that indictment looks like, who that fellow was, and what the scam ultimately entailed. And then, of course, what's coming next for the massive amounts of fraud that are existing and being perpetuated all across America. It is a lovely day and a lovely, especially Friday. Very nice to have you back here. I hope you're having a blessed Good Friday if you're, of course, pausing to honor and celebrate that important day. We have some good news to get to. Hopefully, we've got the tubes working all across the fruited plains of the interwebs as we close out the week. Looks like we're live across the board. Thank you for joining us, my friends. Thank you for liking the video, subscribing wherever you're watching it, and sharing the show with every single person you've ever met in your entire life. We appreciate that. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into it. The DOJ done playing around in the Fulton County ballot fight. We had a meet and confer, which was supposed to be a little friendly meeting between the prosecutors at the DOJ and the Fulton County Board of Commissioners and the rest of their crew. This was ordered by the judge. He said, all right, they asked for more information after the evidentiary hearing. Remember the context of this case. It is Pitts, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, suing the United States. There's a criminal investigation already underway, and Rob Pitts and the Fulton County Fraudsters are now suing essentially to get the ballots back. The analogy would be a criminal defendant suing to go get the murder weapon returned back to them. Because if the prosecutors and the police have the murder weapon, oh, that's a big problem for their case. So they want the ballots back, and they're in front of a Trump-appointed judge called Jean-Paul Boulet. Maybe it's French. But he, of course, said, I want you guys to go meet. We had an evidentiary hearing. It was a big 2.5, 3-hour hearing, and the people who were involved on behalf of Fulton County are some of the biggest Democrat hack lawyers that we've ever seen here. Of course, Norm Eisen, one of the hubs of the entire lawfare operation, along with Abby Lowell, one of the top defense attorneys for the Democrats, join hands like in one of those cartoons where all the rings come together and then they unite. They came scratching and skidding in here because this is the epicenter of the fraud. And so what we saw after the evidentiary hearing, this hearing was back on March 27th, and we didn't get a lot out of it other than the court was going to continue to receive motions and continue to process his analysis. But what we saw is right after that, we had the Fulton fraudsters file a motion to supplement their argument. So after the hearing is over, they came out and they said, well, we want this and we want that and we want to get all this other information. And the DOJ said this, and so make them give us this. And they were essentially extending and asking for more discovery. So in the battle for the murder weapon, they were saying, well, you know, we need information about how they found the murder weapon and who told them about it and what kind of weapon is it? All the details. Of course, that's nonsense. There's an active, open criminal investigation that's already underway by the DOJ prosecutors in another proceeding. And so they're trying to get a sneak preview of what the charge is and what the crimes will ultimately be. And I suspect the reason that they came in here and they wanted to supplement all this is because they had an inkling that the hearing did not go their way. So they were asking the judge essentially to not issue a ruling and to give them more time to continue to fight this out, because more time and a longer fight is much better than losing outright. They don't want that to happen at all. So they asked for more information. Then what the judge did is he came down and he said, all right, I don't want to make a decision yet. So he then ordered the parties to meet and confer, right? So go sit around and do a little powwow and have a conversation about whether the DOJ agrees to give the responses that Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen demanded. Can you guys give it to them? I don't want to decide it, so you guys go talk amongst yourself, and then let me know what you decide. Or if you're going to give them some things or not other things or whatever. Now we're up to speed. Now we've got the latest that has come in, a couple of filings over this week, April 1, 2, and 3. We'll go through all of them, but the first one we'll start with is the result of the meet and confer. And what do you think happened at the meeting? You think they came to an agreement to return the ballots or to answer questions about the affidavit from the FBI agent and about why they went and got the search warrant? In other words, is the DOJ going to give them more evidence that they can use to get a sneak preview of their criminal case? No, absolutely not. So here's what happened. And the motion is now being filed by the same people that we've seen before. Norm Eisen, of course, over at the Democracy Defenders Fund. You see him there. Abby Lowell, who represented Hunter Biden and Letitia James and a bunch of other Democrat hacks, all coming in here and saying, yeah, it didn't work out so well for us. So here's what they told the judge. They said, all right, Judge, in consideration of the questions that the court raised during the March 27th hearing, we, the fraudsters, filed a post-motion hearing, and we wanted to get even more evidence about what is happening in our prosecution that is hopefully coming soon. And so after the hearing, the court then ordered the parties to meet and confer about this motion. Is the DOJ going to agree to supply responses or even a subset of the responses? Now, they notify the judge. In accordance with your order, the parties did meet and confer on April 1. And the whole thing was kind of a fool's joke. None of this should have even come this far at all. And petitioners here, the fraudsters, they hereby notify the court that the DOJ denied and declined to supply any information or any answers in response to their request or any subset of those requests at all. Instead, the DOJ said, we're going to be filing an opposition to this motion. And we're going to be explaining why we're not giving you a damn thing. So all of that was submitted back on April 1st. We saw that. We were waiting for the DOJ to drop some news for us and to actually issue their reply. And we have that now. And here's what we've got. They wrote this one over to the judge. In response, in opposition to the motion to supplement the evidentiary record, we're not going to give you any more information. And here's why. They said, all right, Judge, the fraudsters belatedly, they seek internal information now about an ongoing criminal investigation that we're pursuing in criminal land, not in civil court in front of Judge Boulet. Their motion fails for numerous reasons and only confirms that they have not satisfied their standard and their burden under the Rule 41G, which is for a return of property. First, Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen and the rest of the goons, they request, and what they have requested is untimely. Because first of all, these fraudsters, the petitioners, just as easily could have requested the information that they seek before the evidentiary hearing, which took place last week. Second, and they didn't do that. They came after the fact, right? They want to do this piecemeal. They were in the middle of the hearing. They're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, that's an angle that we can use to attack them. So now after the hearing, almost after the trial, it was like a mini trial on this to see if they met the standard or not. They said, we need more information. It's too late. They had their opportunity and they failed. Now, number two, the request that they are submitting now seeks information that is also irrelevant. Why? Because the 11th Circuit and the case law, the prior precedent, holds that there is no constitutional violation here. Remember, the standard that we saw was callous disregard. You get your property back if the government is acting like a lunatic, if they're acting with callous disregard of your rights. They're just saying, well, I know you have rights, And there's no legal basis to overcome those rights. And so F you, we're not going to give you, we're not going to follow your constitutional rights and just come take your property. You have a disregard for their rights, and it's calloused. It's hardened. Almost no reasonable person would ever think about doing that because they're not going to act with callousness. They're going to act with nonpartisanship and being unbiased. And of course, in this case, they went to a judge twice and got search warrants. So if the DOJ was acting callously, first of all, the judge would have denied their affidavit and a request for a warrant. And number two, if they're acting callously, then the judge is acting callously because the judge gave them permission and said, yeah, go get the materials. Saying we are not even close to that standard of constitutional rights. There was no callous disregard of constitutional rights at all. We can use the criminal process to get materials regardless of when or whether those materials had also been sought civilly. And this was the main argument that the Fulton Fraudsters had been making. They said, well, Harmy, Dillon, and others were suing for these records in a different parallel civil case. And so once they got stalled out by the federal judges there, then they just said, oh, well, if we can't get it this way, then we'll go get it that way. And they're saying, by the way, you're allowed to do that. The 11th Circuit says you can have a civil case and a criminal case. Just because you have a civil case doesn't preclude you from investigating a crime. You might actually come to more information that a crime did occur by pursuing the civil case and say, oh, okay, well, now this is happening over here. Now we're finding evidence of a crime. Just imagine if you could escape all criminal liability because you had a civil case that was pending. People sue each other, and then all of a sudden the DOJ is frozen out. No criminal prosecution because there's an open civil case. Have to wait till that's concluded. Ridiculous. Of course, the case law is not going to say that. So petitioners certainly cannot complain, here are the fraudsters in Fulton, that the United States government, the DOJ, we actually went through a more arduous process. We actually did things that are more difficult than in a civil case, which in this case, of course, is going to a judge and obtaining a search warrant. And number three, the information that they're seeking anyways is privileged, as exemplified by their very requests. They want to open up and peer inside a criminal investigation and get evidence to which they would otherwise not be entitled to until and when the criminal prosecution occurs. If they want to make these arguments after the charges are filed or they're indicted, that's fair game. Your defense begins, but you have not been charged yet. And so therefore, you can't go in and get information to which you're not entitled, saying they are literally seeking evidence of, quote, firsthand information about the search warrant's origins so they can go identify the witnesses and begin preparing their defense. Nope, not happening at this time. Can't happen. And they also want internal communications about the case. Of course, all of that is privileged. So they say, Judge, this court should deny this new motion. They should deny their request for a return of property, and they should dismiss this case with haste. They continue. They say, first of all, this motion is untimely. All right. They already had a hearing. They are not happy with the outcome of it, which is why they're trying to go dig into this further, saying the court should deny their motion at the outset. It comes too late. Courts do not typically entertain evidentiary submissions after the hearing and the proceedings have concluded, unless there's some other change of circumstances or some other extraordinary justification, which they're going to argue, of course, is not happening here. Where a court sets a deadline and an evidentiary hearing request is not timely filed, they've got case law from the 11th Circuit in 2003 that says this alone is a sufficient basis to reject the request. You wanted it before, you had an opportunity to ask for it, and you didn't do it. Citing another case here from the artistic entertainment matter as well. And in that case, they said that that was also rejecting a belated evidentiary motion that was raising issues that could have been addressed much earlier in the litigation, but Abby Lowell and Norm Eisen didn't do it. So they also say they have filed what amounts to be a motion to compel. They want the delivery and the transfer of discovery after the evidentiary hearings have already concluded. Case is over. Trial's over. You had your shot. You blew it. Specifically, they moved the court to order the United States to supplement the record with additional information about the early stages of a criminal investigation, or at a minimum, identify for the court the date of the referral and the date upon which any criminal investigation began. So according to them, This information is needed to determine whether there has ultimately been a callous disregard of their rights. Now, they could have sought this information weeks ago. Nothing changed during or after the evidentiary hearing except their strategy. They cite no new circumstances, no other extraordinary reasons that excuse their failure, Norm, to seek this evidence before the hearing. Why? Because there are none. There are no new circumstances. There is nothing extraordinary that has happened. They just didn't like what went down, and so now they're trying to scramble for a new strategy. Number 2, they write, the court should deny their motion for the independent reason that everything that they seek is actually irrelevant to their demand for a return of their property. As all parties agree, the petitioners, the Fulton County fraudsters, must show, in order to get this property back, that the DOJ acted with a callous disregard of their constitutional rights. And there are other requirements as well. And then that will give the court equitable jurisdiction to make this order, to balance out the wrong. This was unequal. And so now the court can equalize things because the DOJ acted callously. And they're citing a Trump case back from the 11th Circuit as well. The fraudsters argue that the information they seek would be relevant to whether the search warrant was, quote, merely a pretext for expediting access to the records that were already being demanded in the civil litigation. So the civil litigation is happening, and now they launched a criminal investigation in order to bypass the civil litigation. They say that's disregarding our rights in the civil case. Their argument, writes the DOJ, even if it had any evidentiary support, could not possibly establish callous disregard of their rights. Hello. It is not clear which constitutional right they're even purporting to assert here. Their motion does not even mention the Constitution at all. Nor do the Fultoners cite any authority or case law suggesting that we, going to a judge and getting a judicially authorized search warrant to expedite access to evidence in the investigation of potential federal criminal violations, how or why that violates the Fourth Amendment at all, or any other constitutional right, even where the United States has been unable to access the same litigation so far in civil litigation. What right was violated? As far as we can tell, the United States, the DOJ says, no authority exists. Probably why they didn't cite it, because it's not real. Now, actually, to the contrary, somebody did their legal research over there. They say the 11th Circuit has actually recognized that civil and criminal investigations often proceed at roughly the same time. And they share information as well. They cite a case called Goldstein, where this guy was evidently making the same arguments. They said, no, those facts are typical of parallel government investigations. Those are common, and those are generally proper. So we're allowed to have both things going on. It would stultify enforcement of federal law to require a governmental agency to choose to pick one or the other, to choose to either forego recommendation of a criminal prosecution once they seek civil relief, or to not pursue the criminal charges in order to defer to civil proceedings pending the ultimate outcomes of a criminal trial. They're saying you can only do one or the other. They're saying, no, actually not true. The 11th Circuit says exactly in two cases that they're citing, Cordell and Goldstein. They also confirm, to be sure, a due process problem might arise in the context of parallel investigations if two government arms collude in bad faith, but such bad faith collusion generally involves affirmative misrepresentations. It has to reach an affirmative misrepresentation. We're telling you one thing over here and doing something over here, or trickery or deceit by the investigating authority to get the defendant to voluntarily turn over documentary or physical evidence that would then be relevant to the criminal investigation. Once again, citing Goldstein and once again, citing Edwards. That case out of the 11th Circuit explained that there is case law that addresses collusion between agencies if two agencies are colluding to deny you your constitutional rights. But that has to be shown in prosecutorial misconduct, which is not where we're at here. And that would have to be a high standard that would, again, violate their rights. But they're not even alleging that at all. They allege nothing of the sort. They have never turned anything over voluntarily. Nothing has been delivered due to trickery or deceit by the United States in any civil proceeding at all. And moreover, the United States DOJ used criminal process to get the records, which is a higher burden than simply obtaining civil discovery. Satisfying a higher burden by going and getting a warrant is not a violation of any right, let alone a callous violation of that right. And theories that, quote, A constitutional non-violation plus a constitutional non-violation may equal a constitutional violation. That doesn't add up, okay? That doesn't work. They're saying, well, you didn't really violate our constitutional rights in the civil case, and you didn't really violate our constitutional rights in the criminal case. They're not making that alone. They're saying that the combining of the two equals a violation of your rights, even though each one on its own is not. You add them together, it's still not a violation of the constitutional rights. It's 0 plus 0 equals 0. So even setting aside the legal irrelevance of the information that they seek, their theory doesn't make any sense. Oh, Abby, what a dummy. Petitioners assert that there was a rapid switch to a search warrant when the civil suit was being challenged. But the routine filing of a motion to dismiss in a civil litigation matter is no surprise, and certainly not an adverse event that would prompt a change in strategy. Now, further, the United States then, and still now, has every reason to think it would ultimately prevail in the now stayed civil case. In that case, they say notably, the clerk did not oppose the motion to stay the case pending the outcome of the criminal proceedings and agreed that a stay pending the resolution of the separate proceedings involving the documents would be appropriate. So the clerk actually, over in the civil case, said, sure, we'll pause this matter. The criminal case will take precedent. And so there's no trickery. There's no deceit. It's all just normal processing of parallel matters. As even the Fulton fraudsters themselves have emphasized, all records subject to retention under U.S. Code must be made available to the AG or her representatives for inspection, reproduction, copying, and more upon a written demand. The motion to dismiss in the civil case that was argued under the law covers only records that are related to voter registration requirements. But courts have long held that the code under U.S. law encompasses, among other things, much more than just voter registration requirements. It includes records, poll lists, applications for absentee ballots, ballot envelopes, tally sheets, computer programs used to tabulate the votes, as well as the ballots themselves. That all follows from the plain text of the law. 52 U.S. Code section 20701 says, that follows that it covers all records and papers relating to any act requisite to voting. That's how we're proceeding in this matter. They continue, in short, Judge, look, even accepting the Fulton fraudsters' theories and their hypotheticals, they still fall far short of showing the DOJ somehow colluded with itself to deny them their constitutional rights by doing something that is harder, by pursuing the more arduous path of obtaining a warrant, in parentheses, twice. The judge signed off on it twice. So that means the judge violated their rights twice, which of course further means that they failed to show a callous disregard of these rights because a judge stamped it. Now, finally, the information that they seek is also irrelevant because of the many incurable defects in their failed motion. That includes, but is not limited to, the lack of need for these original materials. They don't need it. Nadine Williams said, I don't care what you do with these ballots. Make paper airplanes for all I care. Send them all over the place. And the lack of irreparable harm. This was exemplified by the county's director of registration and elections. She said during the seizure that the United States could, quote, make paper airplanes with the records for all that she cared. Have fun with them. Send them off to each other. You can send them back and forth across the DOJ headquarters. Because the information that they seek is not even relevant, Judge, you should deny their requests. And number 3, their motion also fails for the additional reason that it seeks confidential information about DOJ deliberations to which they're not entitled. This is about an ongoing criminal investigation, which hopefully comes soon. Information that is clearly privileged, as the court has already indicated in its prior order when they wanted to go issue a subpoena to the special agent called Hugh Raymond Evans, who drafted the affidavit and presented it to the judge to get the search warrant. The judge already came down and quashed that subpoena and said, you can't go get information from him. It's all privileged. They filed their 2E request and the DOJ denied it and had a valid basis for doing that. So he was not required to testify because it would have been a sneak preview of the criminal case. They write, look, we've already cited this one too from Florida. The law enforcement investigatory privilege protects from disclosure of files and reports of criminal and civil law enforcement investigations. Cops have privilege too. You can't force them to come testify when they're in the middle of an investigation. Pretty standard criminal law, also validated by the 11th Circuit in the Court of Appeals. They say the purpose of the privilege is to prevent the disclosure of law enforcement techniques and procedures. You see this all the time. Remember Christopher Wray? Oh, I can't talk about that. Ongoing investigation. Oh, it is. It's an ongoing investigation. Yeah, it's ongoing. Okay, Congress like, well, that's the end of that line of questioning. To preserve the confidentiality of sources, to protect witnesses, to protect law enforcement personnel, to safeguard the privacy of individuals who are all involved in an investigation, and otherwise to prevent interference in the investigation at the outset. Now, this court has already recognized this and has explained the breadth of law enforcement privilege, and Norm and Abby are trying to bypass this. And separately, Judge, the most frequent form of executive privilege raised in the judicial arena is deliberative process privilege. We're allowed to deliberate amongst ourselves without people coming in and getting information about those deliberations. It allows the government to withhold documents and other materials that would reveal advisory opinions, recommendations, and deliberations comprising part of a process by which governmental decisions and policies are formulated. Just like we have attorney-client privilege, right? You hire a lawyer. They say, what did you and your lawyer talk about? That's privileged objection. You can't get in there and contemplate the work product and the internal analysis between you and your lawyer. Same thing happens and also applies to the government. So they can make decisions without being attacked all the time by the other side saying, what did you talk about in your private meeting when you guys sat down to debate this? To be sure, both the law enforcement investigatory privilege and the deliberative process privilege are qualified. They're not absolute. And courts do consider numerous factors, but the analysis always boils down to this. You have to balance the evidentiary need against the harm that may result from the disclosure. Here, the information that the Fultoners seek is clearly privileged, Judge. This court has already recognized that the disclosure of information concerning the process and the scope of the criminal investigation, if you make us give it to them, that would interfere with enforcement proceedings or disclose investigative techniques and procedures, the effectiveness of which would thereby be impaired. Yet, the Fultoners want a record of the supposed discussions about the same investigation. That information, to the extent it exists, would plainly bear on the government's law enforcement techniques and our procedures, as well as our internal deliberations, comprising part of a process by which the governmental decisions have been formulated. Any disclosure in these circumstances would chill executive branch officials from discussing important investigations, whether they're parallel or not. And truthfully, open the floodgates for all of these types of attacks on all DOJ investigations. Judge, if you grant this here, then you're going to be setting precedent which other criminal defendants or prospective criminal defendants will use to their benefit. Citing more cases. In this case, in the parentheses, they say, courts consider, quote, the possibility of future timidity by government employees. Nobody will want to talk about anything if all of their internal discussions can be forced to be disclosed. And there is no countervailing need for the information. As we've already noted, Judge, this information is immaterial to any legal issue and could not change their failure to establish a callous disregard or this court's equitable jurisdiction. So they write, in conclusion, for the foregoing reasons, Judge, you should deny the motion to supplement the evidentiary record, and you should dismiss this case and do it now. Sign here by Michael Weisbuck, Senior Counsel to the Associate Attorney General, who is now, I think, Stanley Woodward. He was the Associate Attorney General, but now that Todd Blanche is on top, I'm not sure if he got elevated to the deputy. But at the time of the filing, he's working for Stanley Woodward. Stanley Woodward, of course, we saw help defend Walt Nauta in the Mar-a-Lago raid case, who's now the number 3, now maybe the number 2 up there at the DOJ. So the DOJ saying, we're not giving you anything. Okay, you're done. They asked for a whole laundry list of things. They say, we're not giving it to you. Judge wanted us to meet and confer. Might have been the shortest meet and confer ever. I'd love to actually be at that one. The answer is no. Well, what about this? No. The answer is no. Well, what about this? No, 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 no. Abby Lowell, Norm, get the hell out of my office. The answer is no. They told the judge that, and now we await the judge's final decision on that. We'll see if he orders the disclosure of anything, or if he holds another hearing or whatever. But the DOJ is denying Fulton County their request, and they've got some pretty good case law to back it up. So more will come on this, but we also have some politicians out there. In Georgia, the lieutenant governor called Burt Jones. He was asked about how politics work over there in Fulton County and said, if you've been in Georgia a while, man, you're very familiar with this noxious odor coming out of Fani land and her cabal of fraudsters. Here's what the lieutenant governor had to say from Georgia.
Yeah, one of only 3 people who actually were fighting for election integrity back there in 2020, and I've had Fani Willis come after me for 2.5 years, trying to indict me along with the other 19 that she eventually did that with. But if you've been around Georgia politics for any amount of time, you'll know that Fulton County has always had issues with elections. It doesn't matter if it's statewide elections or municipal elections, and this is no different. We've been asking for ballots. We'd had court orders asking for ballots and copies of the ballots and everything else. And then finally, when the FBI finally raided the facility where they were holding the ballots, they all looked at one another like, how could this happen? And we were like, well, what do you expect when we ask you numerous times, get court orders, get subpoenas, everything else, and they don't comply? So finally, the FBI, thank goodness, the DOJ under the Trump administration took action and went in there and got the ballots. And we're hoping that they'll find what we've all suspected for quite some time.
Lieutenant Governor, a lot has happened since 2020. Georgia took it upon itself to make things better. First, you had your election reform law, which gave us voter ID and other great measures. Now the Senate has put forth a measure last week that would go back to old-fashioned paper ballots for most people, something that's very popular when you look at the polling. Tell us the likelihood of that happening and even hitting the 2026 election with it.
Well, it's got a 50-50 shot because it got through the Senate, and that was obviously it's got to get through the House now, and we're putting a lot of pressure on the House to get it done. Like I said, the one thing that we've passed several measures through the year. 2 years ago, we passed get rid of the QR codes on the paper applications, and we've got a Secretary of State and Brad Raffensperger that will not comply with what we're asking them to do, and that's the only good thing about this governor's race. Is that we'll have us a new Secretary of State at the end of it because he's running for governor. I don't know why he thinks he can win, but he's doing that. And we're hopeful to get this done. We're at the final week of our legislative session. Like I said, Senator Doolazal passed that bill out of the Senate last week. And so we're very hopeful to get it done this coming week. We've got 2 days left.
Yeah, Brad Raffensperger is running for governor because he's following the same model that the other Secretary Spice Girls have also tried to conduct. Katie Hobbs in Arizona, Secretary of State. She rigs elections in her favor, suddenly becomes governor. Amazing. Same thing's happening over there in Colorado. Secretary of State Crazy Eyes Griswold, who is apparently even more of a lunatic and more crazy than anybody suspected, given the fact that she screams at her staff and does a bunch of other unethical things. She's now running to be the Attorney General. Same situation up with Jocelyn Benson. They all run for higher office. Once they get in there, and they can rig the election mechanics, they say, perfect. I've delivered for the Democratic Party, and I've changed the rules such that I'll win. So they run for higher office. Brad Raffensperger is an honorary Secretary Spice Girl, and he shouldn't be running for governor. He should probably be in jail. And that's very likely why he doesn't want to cooperate with any of these investigations, because he was delivering the election results to his favored party, even if he is a Republican in Georgia, only in name. Now, there's also, as we heard from Burt Jones, the Senator Doolazal latest update that the bill passed out of the Senate and making its way over to the House. And Doolazal said, been on this for quite some time. We brought Fani Willis in for questioning. Her unhinged behavior was on full display the entire time. We've been saying this for years. She's the biggest Fani in Georgia. You don't mess with the biggest Fani in Georgia. Otherwise, she'll burst through the wall like the Kool-Aid guy in pink, or come in with that big fur coat and her $11,000 handbag. She dodged questions. She lashed out. She refused to answer straight, just like Crazy Eyes Griswold over in Colorado. They're all a little bit nuts. Georgia voters deserve representation that fights for them. Here's Greg Doolazal, who's running for lieutenant governor to replace Burt Jones when he ascends to higher office, hopefully as well.
We did something that the Senate hasn't done for over 50 years, which was give a committee the authority to subpoena witnesses and put them under oath.
It's awesome.
Well, yeah. we fought Willis in court for 14 months. Actually, I think it was maybe 16 months. And we had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, to essentially fight whether or not we had the power to subpoena her. And ultimately, she finally agreed to come testify, and she did it. And, here's what we found in that. I don't know if you can call it a hearing, because it was really in my opinion, a clown show.
Gong show, yeah.
Where, it was not a serious discussion of the issues, right? She came in, she had an agenda, she wanted to yell and scream, accuse everybody of everything, and did not want to answer questions. And when there were questions, frankly, that I believe she should have known the answer to, such as what funds from your department were used to pay Mr. Wade, she said she didn't know. What was your level of coordination with the Jan 6 committee? I see this letter here from you asking the January 6th committee to work with you. What did it look like for them to work with you? Well, I don't recall. Why did your team travel to meet with the Department of Justice? Well, I don't recall. Why did your team go meet with the White House for 8 hours on the very same day, have a phone call for 8 hours on the very same day that Jack Smith was appointed as special counsel?
Weird.
I don't recall.
They can't recall anything, but of course they can recall. They know what they did. They are not bright enough to go and figure out their own RICO case for 19 co-defendants, including the President of the United States. And they were too busy indicting each other repeatedly over and over while they were on their cruises and in Napa Valley. Ugh. Gross. And so they didn't have the time. They had like 2.5-hour lunch meetings, just the two of them, maybe even in the office too. Gross. Need a sanitation crew in there. But of course, the scrutiny will continue. And I think that there is seemingly some momentum that is now taking place because the ballots have been seized. They are in the possession of the FBI. The DOJ citing a bunch of case law from the 11th Circuit that is binding on this lower level judge. And the judge now has all of the evidence that he needs to make a decision. We'll see what he does. But as it stands, the DOJ denied any further information. We're done negotiating with you. Judge, please make a ruling. Dismiss this case so that the criminal investigation can go on. We're keeping these ballots. And hopefully, with the changing of the guard at the DOJ, we start to see some accelerations in accountability and these prosecutions pick up steam. We'll be here to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right. Now, we're not done with the fraudsters yet because we got ActBlue, which is also in some serious trouble. Democrat fundraising behemoth ActBlue now in big trouble. The DOJ setting their sights on them after we learned that they apparently lied to Congress. You see, the New York Times is getting into this, saying they may have misled Congress, which is a nice way to sanitize the fact that they may have committed a federal crime. And the story is actually quite shocking because this woman, her name is Regina Wallace Jones, seen here. She was the president, currently is the president. They fired a bunch of their lawyers once the lawyers said, you may be in criminal liability land now, lady. So she melted down. They write, the Democrat fundraising group is massive. They've processed billions of dollars in Democrat money, and they may have committed multiple crimes and enabled election fraud in terms of fundraising. Here's the background on this, written by a couple of guys over at the New York Times. They say in early 2025, a law firm working for ActBlue, the Democratic fundraising behemoth, delivered the organization a startling warning. The firm concluded that ActBlue's chief executive, Regina, right here, she had given a potentially misleading response, aka a lie, to a congressional Republican and their investigators in a 2023 letter. They said, hey, where's all this money come from? You're making billions of dollars that is being funneled into Democratic Party hacks, and we want to know if it came from overseas in violation of federal law. She sent them a letter explaining how the organization actually vetted the donations, and they were not illegally coming from foreign citizens. And Obama did this same thing back when he was running. Remember that scandal? No one did anything about it because everyone's so weak up there, I guess, at the DOJ. No one wants to dig into it. Nobody wants to touch the money. And Republicans may have similar problems on their end. But Obama was doing this. They were not checking, I think, the CVCs or the zip codes or whatever. And this was years ago when money was coming in hand over foot, and they were also taking that money. And then they knew after the fact, all they would need to do is settle with the FEC. And they did. They paid a couple $100,000. The whole thing went away. Now, the letter from Regina Wallace Jones said that ActBlue carried out multi-layered screenings. We're checking multi-layer checks, actually, of contributions that helped root out those funds that are flowing in from overseas. But in fact, the law firm called Covington and Burling, who was advising her, they said, well, some of the steps that you described were not always being followed, and that money is coming in from overseas. So they wrote a memo to her. They said, hey, Regina, this presents a substantial risk for ActBlue. Okay, it's illegal. You're not actually checking things. They wrote in one of two memos expressing legal concerns. One memo raised the specter of a criminal investigation that might be coming down Regina's booty. If prosecutors believe that ActBlue had tried to conceal the facts about its efforts to prevent foreign contributions. Federal election law, as we know, prohibits foreign citizens or people who are not permanent residents from donating directly to federal candidates or political action committees known as the PACs. If you lie to or you obstruct Congress, that's a crime. And it turns out she sent a letter on this, and here's what the letter looks like. That was sent over to the Committee on House Administration, 1 of 4-page letter. And so they sent this letter to their lawyers, and the lawyer said, oh, you're in big trouble. We've done a full validation on your claims, and it turns out you're a liar, probably, without saying that. Oh, they say, all right, Congressman Steele, he's investigating this. He's still investigating this, Brian Steele. Sent this back in 23. Oh, thank you for your inquiry. You know, we do a lot of things, and I want to share with you our efforts to promote transactional security and fraud prevention. Our nonprofit mission is to support the ability of Americans and small dollar donors, and we've heard about this called smurfing, I think resembling the blue Smurfs. But basically, there are these algorithms or something's going on whereby many donations to the tune of $7, $8, $5, $4, $12 will be all going into one candidate. Those small donation amounts are all under the threshold for reporting individual donations, and so they don't actually have to report the person who's actually making those donations, or it doesn't reach a certain threshold such that it raises scrutiny. Then those come out to the tune of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands. And each candidate then has like one lady who's a grandma in Oklahoma or somewhere. And then she's going, what? People show up at her door. They say, did you make 15,000 donations to this Democrat candidate? She says, 15,000 what? No, obviously I didn't. And so there's all sorts of problems that are here. So what do? She says, oh, Congress, don't worry. ActBlue employs a robust security program and fraud prevention to verify the identities of voters. We prevent the fraudulent use of credit cards. We block impermissible contributions. We designed this practice to ensure security, and we're in compliance with all the laws. Now, we act as a conduit for many people to make donations, but we have procedures and processes to ensure that impermissible donations are promptly and effectively examined. And for donors, our process fosters trust. Our approach is multi-layered. We have checks and confirmations occurring throughout the donation process to verify the donors. These measures, which include compliance measures, technological tools, and even manual reviews, we help ensure the identity of donors, we root out potential foreign contributions, and we protect donors from financial fraud. Here are the things that we do. First of all, we clearly disclose contribution rules. We say you can only be a U.S. citizen. You swear you're a U.S. citizen. You promise. And we collect information as required by law. We get passport information. We review contributions. And contributions are checked for indications of fraud and foreign activity. We use an external prevention tool. We employ, ActBlue says Regina, a leading fraud detection management system used by major companies. The tool automatically assesses contributions for fraud, and depending on the score, it may flag them for manual review. We check 140 behavioral signatures, recent address changes to help flag all these things. And we can determine if somebody is a foreign contributor and manually review all these things too. We have industry standards. We have a payment processor. We'll block certain things. We have a robust credit card security system. And we're very valuable. We take seriously our responsibility, and all of this meets all legal requirements, and we're doing everything legally. So get off our back, all right, Congress? Signed by Regina Wallace Jones, the CEO and the president. She sends that to Congress. Here's what we got. Now, in early 2025, a law firm working for ActBlue, the fundraising behemoth, delivered them the warning. The memos, once they sent over to Regina, that, hey, you might be charged with lying or obstructing Congress, they had a meltdown. That's the New York Times words. A meltdown at the highest levels of ActBlue, one of the Democratic Party's most vital financial organs. A series of top officials at ActBlue resigned in quick succession. New York Times noted those departures last year, but a key cause of the tumult over there was the warnings about potentially lying to Congress. They say misleading Congress over the foreign donations. Now this is being reported here for the first time. ActBlue is now all but declaring war on its own past lawyers, which is an extraordinary turn of events at a moment when Trump has already ordered a DOJ investigation into ActBlue. Democrats are nervous that any additional upheaval at ActBlue could destabilize the party's critical fundraising apparatus ahead of the midterm elections. They raise billions. All levels of Democrat candidates, from incumbent presidents to school board aspirants, use ActBlue to raise campaign money from online donors. The platform has processed nearly 19 billion with a B, in contributions since its founding in 2004, building a donor database with millions of credit card numbers that is unmatched in American politics. Okay, it's gigantic. The money flows. Nearly 23,000 candidates and groups used the site in 2025. They raised almost $1.8 billion from 52 million contributors, some of which recur every month. Woo! That's going to be a big one when they go down. The Times reviewed Covington's memos, the law firm, and resignation letters from ActBlue, and correspondence between the law firm and ActBlue. Screenshots of some of the fundraising organization's internal Slack messages. Man, somebody blew the whistle. And a timeline of events produced by ActBlue. The Times spoke also with half a dozen former ActBlue employees who participated in or were briefed on the events, all of whom were granted anonymity to describe the sensitive situation, and senior officials, including the chairwoman of the board. Dang. So ActBlue is under the most intense scrutiny it's ever faced. The DOJ has now launched an investigation. It's ongoing. And the Covington memos did not state explicitly that ActBlue broke the law, because they would never put that in writing, obviously, or that Ms. Wallace Jones misled Congress. Again, they would never put that in writing. They're saying, hey, we're not coming to conclusions here. We're just analyzing and giving you some options, and you probably lied to Congress, and what you told them is not true. But instead, they just explained the risks of her previous statement to Congress. Here's what they said. It can be alleged, if a prosecutor decides to pick this up and run with it, it's going to say Pam, but she's not there anymore. So Todd. It can be alleged that ActBlue accepted or facilitated the acceptance of foreign national contributions into American elections. And in addition, the lawyers told her, because ActBlue's staff was aware that its system was not as robust as necessary, it could be alleged that these violations were knowing and willful. You knew this was a problem, you knew this was a law, and you didn't do it. A standard that increases the penalties the FEC might seek and gives the DOJ jurisdiction for a potential criminal investigation from their lawyers that they hired. Now, the memos did not identify any specific illegal contributions, and they suggested that the scope of any potential problems was unclear. But the chairwoman of ActBlue, called Kimberly Peeler Allen, on the board of directors, she said in an interview that less than 1% of contributions in 2024 had signs that they were from foreign countries. But within ActBlue, okay, so another presumably, in my opinion, liar. Oh, no. Foreign money? No. 1%? No. But within ActBlue, the memos raised serious concerns, including about Regina's leadership. Some departing officials who all abandoned ship, right? They're like, oh, crap, she lied to Congress. They're going to prosecute us. I'm going to go work in the private sector now and get out of this nonprofit. Some departing officials told the board that ActBlue was being gravely mismanaged. In a tense video conference days after the memos were delivered from the law firm, a woman called Dana Remus, a Covington lawyer who served as White House counsel for Joe Biden, warned Regina, you're at risk of having legal liability. You needed your own personal lawyer because you might be going to jail. We're hired to advise your company, your nonprofit. You got to go hire a criminal defense lawyer and get a good one. That's according to two people who were on the call. Within weeks, ActBlue fired Covington. Said, I don't like your memo. I don't like your legal advice. Now, ActBlue is questioning the legal counsel provided by Covington, a major firm home to high-profile Democrat lawyers. The fundraising organizations says that the firm insufficiently reviewed the letter to Congress. They say, well, they read it wrong. These lawyers are idiots, even as it insists that the letter was accurate. Regina said in a written statement to the Times when they pinged her about this, she said, will you leave me alone? The statements in my 2023 letter to the House Administration Committee were accurate in the context in which they were written. Noting that Covington had even approved the letter. Still, ActBlue later took quiet steps to strengthen its efforts to block these foreign donations and conveyed word of its new policies in an unrelated letter to its new lawyers that they sent to Congress back in 2025. Now, that came after Regina said that ActBlue had terminated Covington, and more than a year of navigating, they said they were tardy, they were unprepared, and they had counsel, lawyers that bordered on malpractice. So the law firm might be actually the entity that's leaking this material because they're saying we're not tardy at all. We're very on time. We're not unprepared. We're extremely prepared. You're just a criminal. A Covington spokesman called David Schaefer said, we have complete confidence in the legal advice our lawyers provided to them. And I'm not going to address their specific claims. But the remarkable turmoil at ActBlue was just years in the making. It began with the 23 letter to Congress. Regina sent it to Republicans in the House Admin Committee. They ramped up investigations, and they were also lawyering up for a coming fight and brought on Covington. The letter from Willis gave descriptions of what they did. She wrote the organization processed contributions with foreign mailing addresses only if the donor had a passport. But that turned out not to be entirely accurate, said her lawyer's memos in 2025. She also said that in some instances, ActBlue would contact donors to request their passport information in order to process the donations, and they would refund anything that could not be validated. But that also did not always happen, according to Covington. For example, donors who paid through third-party apps like Apple Pay or PayPal or Venmo, they were not asked for passport information at all. Money just came flowing in. The Covington memos indicated that ActBlue did not have the rigor in its review of overseas donations that was required or that it had described to Congress. And as a result, one memo said, there is a substantial risk that some of the funds received were impermissible contributions from foreign nationals. How much? The other memo, which stated that ActBlue had requested an outline of potential legal risks associated with statements to Congress that Regina made, that may be alleged to be false or misleading, explicitly explored the potential penalties. The memo from the firm noted the maximum penalties were 5 years in prison, Regina, though it also added that such a sentence would be extremely unlikely. Yeah, well, we hope not. The Covington lawyers also wrote of the 23 letter that she sent to Congress. They said, all right, in our view, the strongest defense is that when read in context, the statements are accurate, and that the relevant paragraphs contain qualifying language. So she didn't actually lie because she was kind of sneaky in her words. 3 potential options for ActBlue. They said, all right, listen, this is what our advice to you is, since you lied to Congress probably. They said, provide new information without explicitly stating that ActBlue is correcting the record. So fix your lies without telling them that you lied. Explicitly correct the record. Say, we were wrong. We're sorry. here's the new information that we just discovered, or do not provide additional information clarifying the prior statements, basically cover it up. For each option, Covington presented Regina and ActBlue with advantages and risks. Some of the most severe risks came from doing nothing. They said an aggressive prosecutor may view your 23 letter not just as a false statement, but as an effort to conceal the foreign contributions. You knew it was happening, you weren't doing anything about it, and you lied about it. Now, ActBlue would eventually change its vetting practices and inform Congress, but not before there was an internal uproar. And the Covington law firm memos arrived at a time when they had no general counsel. Only months earlier, in November 24, Regina had voiced concerns to the board that their in-house lawyer called Darren Hurwitz was not doing a good job, and within weeks he was terminated. Ms. Peeler Allen, also on the board, said that the lawyer had been let go because he was not necessarily up to the job. Yeah, blame the lawyer. And he made a series of lapses. Well, what'd he do? I don't want to talk about it. Got it. So then Hurwitz said in a statement that board member, Peeler Allen, and her assessment was completely false. He said, I can't tell you what's going on. Attorney-client privilege and legal ethics prevents me from telling you that she's a liar, but it's false. Covington's conclusions landed with a thud inside ActBlue. The lawyers were like, yeah, you're probably going to jail. In ActBlue's timeline, the organization wrote that Regina was, quote, not informed that her statements could be misconstrued. You're going to catch me in a lie? And taken out of context until over a year later after signing the 23 letter. The board member, Peeler Allen, also said that after the board members learned of the Covington memos, they expressed significant alarm at the law firm's role in reviewing the letter. It felt like they were trying to cover their butts, she said at one board meeting. It's highly unusual for a former client of a major white shoe law firm like Covington to attack it publicly, as top ActBlue officials did in statements to the Times. And Covington's a big law firm, like they represent a bunch of these Democrats. Peeler Allen said that ActBlue had ultimately decided not to tell Congress, that it wanted to amend its past statements. Well, we saw it as we weren't going to go poke the bear by issuing a correction for things that, frankly, the committee hadn't necessarily looked at more closely. The committee's like, well, I guess she said they're doing internal deliberations. And they're working on it, and they have all these checks and balances, and so they didn't follow up. So like, all right, they're not following up. Don't say anything. Just continue on. Senior ActBlue officials insisted that they were doing nothing wrong in the letter, but at the same time, they did acknowledge that the organization had stiffened its measures for vetting foreign donations. And ActBlue's new outside counsel included a description of those changes in a second letter to Congress, which accused the Republicans of a partisan witch hunt for daring to investigate their foreign fraud. He said ActBlue has recently implemented additional restrictions that will automatically reject contributions, and this is a new approach. But the board member suggested that there was no contradiction between the old and the new. Said, we learned about the gap, and then we remedied the situation, and we answered it. We continue to answer the truth to the best of our knowledge. There was a video call that also happened between the leadership of ActBlue and Covington, and it did not go well. Miss Remus warned Miss Regina about her own legal liability. You're in trouble, and said she should inform the board of directors of the situation because you may have committed a crime, according to two people on the call. In an email 2 days later, Miss Remus, the lawyer, reiterated her recommendations. She said, go tell your board because you might go to jail. She called necessary prerequisites for our ability to continue to represent you. Within weeks, there was an exodus of senior ActBlue officials. Everyone is abandoning ship. I'm not going down with Regina. I'm out of here. Know anyone who's hiring? And the relationship with ActBlue and Covington would be severed. The two participants who spoke to the Times said that Regina initially resisted their recommendations, but Miss Wallace Jones Regina said she never did that. A spokeswoman for ActBlue called Deandra Roberts LaBue said that Miss Wallace had indeed gotten her own lawyer. 2 days after the video call, one of ActBlue's remaining in-house lawyers also resigned. He said, I'm concerned that leadership is not fully committed to transparently addressing with the board the seriousness of our legal compliances with political donations and accepting them from abroad. And we may have made past misrepresentations to Congress, said Mr. Ting in a resignation letter to LaBue. Said Mr. Ting was already given his notice and he was already going to be fired anyway, so good riddance to him. The next day, the last remaining full-time lawyer in ActBlue's legal department, called Zain Ahmad, he sent the Covington memos, Mr. Ting's resignation letter, and an email from Remus to Regina and to the entire board. So Zain is like, I'm out of here. I got to tell the board. He sends everything to everybody. Within a day, Mr. Ahmad's access to the ActBlue computer shut off. He wrote what had happened in an internal Slack message that someone else deleted. He said, please be advised that we have an anti-retaliation and whistleblower policies for a reason. They nuked him. Get out. Another human resources official wrote on an ActBlue Slack channel that Ahmad Zain had been treated unfairly and warned that everyone should proceed with caution. Then, a half hour later, she resigns. She had also previously given notice and simply accelerated her departure. Like, they're all going to be fired anyways. We knew they were all leaving anyways, says Labou. Mr. Ting, Mr. Ahmad, and Mr. Seld, no one wanted to talk about it. The board then met with Covington days later for a special meeting, met again 4 days later, and voted unanimously to end the relationship with their lawyers who were just trying to advise them on how not to go to jail. This week, Labou said a former ActBlue official had previously demanded $1 million, and he was blackmailing us. We didn't pay him that. And so the demand has been rejected. Now, Trump issued an order to direct the DOJ to investigate them last spring. He said, hopefully ActBlue, the Democrats' illegal scam used to raise money, apparently from a lot of foreign contributions, is being looked at by my authorities. And Republicans on the House are investigating this right now. There lax procedures in fraud prevention and demanding information about all these resignations. ActBlue officials increasingly treated the investigations as political fishing expeditions because that's how it all is. You're attacking me. This is retribution. We're good people. We did nothing wrong. If we did something wrong, we didn't know. If we committed some sort of fraud, it's administrative error. It's oversight. There's no intentionality at all. And you should go after WinRed. Now, let's be clear. Someone said, Trump and his accomplices are targeting us. The board woman said ActBlue wanted to turn the page on the drama. This is something that we have weathered and we're going to continue to weather, and we're stronger for it. She sent a one-page letter on behalf of the entire board standing behind Regina. She said, Regina is amazing. She has demonstrated exceptional leadership across every dimension of her role. And they're in big trouble. So we saw the letter. We know the House Judiciary GOP is looking into this. They said, Democrat fundraising giant ActBlue is accepting foreign campaign contributions. Not allowed to do that. That is the real foreign election interference. Are the Russia hoax believers upset about this real election interference? No. They'd rather just continue to hyperventilate over a made-up hoax called Russia collusion. Jake Tapper, Russia collusion, all day, every day for 4 years. All made up. But they don't want to look into this because this benefits them, and they're happy to take foreign money as long as it benefits their party. Here's more from Brian Steele. He said, my investigation, the guy who they sent the letter to that was filled with lies, into ActBlue remains ongoing, and I won't stop until we have answers. Thank you, Brian Steele. We're looking forward to it. Now, here's more on this. The Democrats are now trying to snake out the money into different tentacles so that nobody can track it. This article published today, over from the Times as well, says the left is creating new obscure nonprofits to funnel hundreds of millions of dollars into politics and advocacy. Hundreds of millions through new obscure nonprofits, 501c3s. Nobody knows where the money's coming from. The ultra-wealthy donors who are backing the Democrat Party are increasingly impossible to identify. That's the point. In the decade and a half since the Supreme Court opened the door to money, PACs can take in unlimited contributions to support candidates. And for the first decade or so, Republicans were dominating the dark money game. But now the Democrats are running the table. Ultra-rich donors like Reid Hoffman, remember when Mark Zuckerberg donated $400 million to the CEFC fund to fortify the elections? They're rigging the country for their favor. And the Democrat Party is more corrupt than the Republican Party, and they know how to hand out the benefits of their power to their donor class. So the billionaires donate to the Democrats. That's partly because the ultra-rich donors are fearing that Trump might come after them. The current disclosure system makes that easy. Billionaires and corporations are giving tens of millions at a time to a daisy chain of nonprofits that obscure the identities when the nonprofits make their own large contributions to the super PACs. These kind of donations are sometimes called gray money, and now there's a relatively new collection of liberal nonprofits, some with dizzyingly similar names, and some operated by the same people, playing a big role in the trend of muscling out the big consultants. Here's how some of this looks. How new Democratic nonprofits funnel political donations to super PACs with anonymity. Billionaire donors like Reid Hoffman, who's now like an advocate for Epstein victims, even though he was reportedly on the island. They go to Our American Future $1 billion, Our American Future Action, Bright Future Fund, Future Forward USA Action, and like a million different perversions of this. Nobody knows what they are. Like Democracy Defenders, like Americans for Democracy, Democracies for Americans. Like, oh gosh. Then it goes into these nonprofits. Then it goes into other nonprofits. Evidence for Impact. Then they all donate from all these nonprofits into Future Forward PAC. Much of this dark money revolves around the largest super PAC known as Future Forward, but no one can figure out how it's actually funded. We got the role played out in 2024, and Future Forward USA Action was without precedent. That nonprofit took in huge contributions from what are believed to be many of the biggest Democrat donors in the country. They then sent out, look at this money, $266 million to the Future Forward Super PAC. Became the biggest advertiser in the presidential election. And I got to imagine they're paying all sorts of spokespeople and probably influencers. And I wonder, how some of these people build such big organizations so quickly out there. It's because there's hundreds of millions of dollars. Their billionaires are outspending our billionaires massively. Future Forward also quietly maintained another nonprofit called Future Forward Education Fund. That group was prohibited by law from spending money on partisan politics, but it did send big money to help finance a $100 million non-political program at Future Forward USA Action. Like, where is the IRS on this? Trump's IRS. Scott Bessent. We need you. Much of how the money flowed from donors to the nonprofits between the new two nonprofits and from the other nonprofits to the super PAC, none of it's public. Future Forward said that all its money was used for the intended legal purpose. Another one, Our American Future. Same story there. American Opportunity Action. Same story there, 20 million. And Evidence for Impact, they say nonprofits typically don't raise tens of millions of dollars almost immediately after they're funded. But these two groups did that. In February 24, an operative close to Silicon Valley donors named Marissa McBride started a political nonprofit called Evidence for Impact. Guess what happens? They accepted 2 donations equaling $40 million. Okay, you start a nonprofit, you're flush with 40 mil. Then another more came in. 10 million of that goes to an anti-Trump organization called Futures Forward Super PAC. She doesn't want to comment about it. As fast as they start them, they then disappear. Bright Future Fund, started back in 2023 by a guy called Preston Elliott, another Democrat operative. In a matter of 28 days that December, Elliott took in over $140 million through just 4 checks. $140 million. The group went on to spend over $180 million on boosting Democrats and progressives. But you're not going to find anything about them because it dissolved this past year as soon as it filed its last tax return a year after the election concluded. Floods of cash coming in. No one can find it from the Democrat billionaires who are all such cowards that they can't even stand behind their causes. Elon Musk, at least, stands behind the causes, uses his name, and says what he believes. But the other billionaires are cowards, and they can't even explain to their own population what they're doing, so they hide in the gutter like the scum that they are. So all of this, of course, begs the question, is any of this illegal? Are they actually spending the money for nonprofit organizations, C3s, that are not supposed to be advocating for anybody? Where does the money come from? Are these Democrat billionaires properly paying their taxes? Are they donating to C3s, taking a big fat tax write-off, and then those C3s are actually going to political advocacy, meaning they can't actually deduct that money from their income? Probably. And so Trump, of course, made the announcement that we're going to be investigating these ActBlue and these Democrat billionaire fraudsters. Here is what Fox News said during that report, in case you missed it.
Meanwhile, President Trump is directing the Justice Department to investigate ActBlue. This is a Democratic donation platform, and the focus as the allegations about illegal straw donors and foreign contributions. Mark Meredith is live in Washington with more. This has been brewing for a while, Mark. What do we need to know?
Dana, for years, you're right about this, but this is a big development. The White House is directing the Attorney General to investigate the Democratic Party's top fundraising platform. It's called ActBlue, and the president says he wants to know if foreign money is being donated to the group and then utilized to sway elections.
Yes.
Democrats are calling this probe a dangerous abuse of power. ActBlue is an enormous operation in Democratic politics. It's raised more than $16 billion since 2004. You may have seen the text pop up from candidates saying, please donate, go to the ActBlue website. Republicans use something similar called Win Red. There was a new memo signed on Thursday directing the Attorney General to investigate if foreign nationals are using the ActBlue platform to bypass campaign finance laws. Trump wants a report out in 6 months.
And hopefully we get it. Pam Bondi's not going to be authoring that report, but it should be hopefully coming soon. We also saw that Chip Roy was asked about this on with Laura Ingraham, and here is what he said. He is, of course, is in Congress investigating some of these matters.
Congressman, that was a lot, but there's something that really jumps out at me here with this ActBlue story. Someone leaked this to the New York Times. And it's either someone at ActBlue, or who knew what ActBlue was doing or allegedly doing, or someone at Covington and Burling who was very uncomfortable, because then they could be linked to this, correct?
Yeah, they blame them.
If it's someone, and again, a law firm doing this would be horrific for the law firm. Something here is very, very fishy, beyond just the substance of this report itself.
Probably the Let Go ActBlue people.
Laura, good to be on this evening. Yeah, I'd be shocked to hear that ActBlue is taking funds from overseas, right?
Sarcasm, yeah.
The fact here is the fact that Covington, their statement was pretty interesting to me, right? To say that basically they were saying, like, our legal advice was good. That's another way as lawyers of saying we were telling them what they needed to hear, which is you need to be mindful of the fact that, you as our client may well have perjured yourself or certainly misled or otherwise lied to Congress. That's a big deal that Covington would say that, and now they're basically publicly saying, look, our legal counsel was good here. I don't know who leaked it. I don't know what was behind it. But what we've known for a long time is that this organized network of leftists and Marxists, ActBlue is obviously a part of that whole operation. They're in, coordination to undermine our entire way of life, right? It's all connected to the Wren Collective, to Soros, to Arabella, and you got ActBlue. They're taking money from all quarters.
China.
We've had
China,
absolutely.
Iran. I mean, and this is the party, by the way, of Russian interference. All they did was claim that, Trump is a puppet of Putin, all this stuff. But the finger is always pointed back at them.
Because they, of course, are involved in massive networks of fraud. We've seen it for years. It goes all the way back to even Obama. And the FEC, nobody does anything about it because it's all about that cash, baby. And as long as that cash keeps flowing, you can pay off the right people. Move money around. Nobody can track it at all. Nobody even knows who's behind it. We have billionaires, apparently, all over America who are donating hundreds of millions of dollars to nonprofits who are then rerouting that money back to their favorite causes, and they can't even stand behind it because they're cowards. Now, Todd Blanche was asked about this. He says we're looking into it. The new acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, on with Jesse last night.
Music to my ears, because we're sick of getting ripped off. Speaking of getting ripped off, I don't know if you saw the New York Times is saying the Democrats were taking millions of dollars in foreign donations and may have been lying about it. Are you looking into this?
I can tell you that is a priority of this administration and this Department of Justice, and it's something that a lot of people have been very worried about for a very long time, and you should rest assured that it includes the Department of Justice and it includes me.
All right. Music to my ears, because we're...
Hopefully, that's true. We'll see very soon. Midterms are coming up. Are they still going to be gobbling in foreign donations? Not if they're indicted. Will be harder to do that. So we then saw that the House committee that's looking into this also is explaining what their take is. More from ActBlue and the Fraudsters.
Microscope again. A new report from the New York Times raising questions about whether its CEO misled Congress. And now the group could face investigations, midterms only months away. Connor Hansen's got more on this. What you find out from Washington. Connor, good morning.
Hi, Bill. Good morning. This could have major implications for Democrats heading into the midterms. One of ActBlue's own former lawyers reportedly suggested this could lead to a criminal investigation. ActBlue has facilitated billions in donations for Democrats, ranging from presidential nominees to local school board candidates. A report in the New York Times cited a 2023 letter from its CEO, Regina Wallace-Jones, to GOP investigators, claiming ActBlue used multi-layered screening to root out foreign donations, which are illegal under federal law. The problem? ActBlue's former lawyers told her some of those steps weren't always followed, and that presented a substantial risk if she was found to have misled Congress.
Started looking into it, we determined that ActBlue had really pulled back on some of the security measures on their website, which would have enabled foreign actors to
Why'd they do that?
Contributions under the name of other people.
ActBlue sent us a statement saying Wallace-Jones never made false statements, adding non-U.S. citizens have not and never will be permitted to make political contributions on our platform. Every contribution made through ActBlue goes through a fraud review. Its former law firm, Covington & Burling, stands by what it said, writing, quote, "We have complete confidence in the legal advice of our lawyers provided to ActBlue." Now, according to the Times, the law firm's memo said some donors paid through platforms like Apple Pay, PayPal, or Venmo, and were not asked for any verification like a passport number to prove they were U.S. citizens. Bill?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Bill is right about that. They knew what they were doing, and every time they get caught, it's always, oh, no, I mean, there was no intentionality there. Just a little oversight. And we fixed the problem, and now this is a political witch hunt. Why are you coming after us? Well, it's because there's intentionality. And I think here, their intentionality is a lot more on sure footing than other areas where they just say, oh, it's all a mistake, because they had lawyers who told Regina, you're in trouble. You can correct the record. She didn't correct the record. It took a bunch of other lawyers and whistleblowers essentially leaving. They retaliated against all of them. Now the truth is coming to light. We have a new Attorney General, Todd Blanche. We've got midterms coming up. We don't want foreigners or foreign influence in our election. No illegal aliens voting. No illegal donations coming from overseas to fund their foreign interests, not ours. So hopefully this investigation continues. We appreciate New York Times reporting on this, and the fraud must stop. We're going to be here to continue to hopefully see prosecutions very soon. Thank you for subscribing and joining, or when they come. All right, and speaking of fraud, we've got one more update, my friends, and then we'll hear from you. Let's start right here. Going to California. Massive fraud ring busted in California. You see this photograph shared by the DOJ, naming some of the people who are in custody. We'll talk today about the indictment for the Gills, Gladwin Gill and Amalu Gill, along with many others who were charged, rather not indicted, charged by criminal complaint. Some people still not in custody yet, but named here by the DOJ in Operation Never Say Die, because this involved hospice fraud. They said people were dying and we were helping them at their end of life care. The people were not dying and they got fat and rich off of it. We've got the criminal complaint here for the Gills, Gladwin and Amalu that we'll take a look at. It's a 53-pager with some juicy bits inside of it. But before we dive in, here's what CBS News said and reported from on scene out there in the fraudulent Southern California.
CBS News is first to report the arrest today of a married couple in Southern California accused of ripping off Medicare for nearly $7.5 million through a series of fraudulent hospice claims. Over 700 hospices in Los Angeles County alone have red flags for fraud, according to our investigative team. In this particular case, the flags included a 5-year survival rate of 97%, high for what is supposed to be end-of-life care.
You're dying.
The FBI says additional arrests are expected.
And they got to go round the rest of them up. So Evelyn Tinadumabuna, she is still at large. Greg Cartmel, still at large. And the rest of them, Lolita Baronilla Menard, got her. Gladwin Gill, got him. Amalu Gill, got her. Who else we got? Nita Alamuete Padit Palma, kind of looks like Ghislaine Maxwell. Adolfo Catbagan, Sonia Griffin, Vincent Surach, Yang Juku, John Cahola. We got Krista Richter. We got John Nicola, Ivan Vern Loratzin. Who else? Tola Aluvava Moala. All of them now busted, courtesy of Operation Never Say Die. And here's what the DOJ said, April 2nd, 8 arrested in healthcare fraud, saying there was a takedown. They owned hospices and they billed taxpayers millions of dollars to serve the, quote, dying. No one was actually dying. They were just getting paid for it. So the DOJ posts this, more than $50 million in intended healthcare fraud losses now charged. In coordination with J.D. Vance's task force, 8 defendants, including 3 nurses, a chiropractor, and a purported psychologist, now been arrested on federal charges. They ran sham hospice care facilities that bilked Medicare by using people without terminal illnesses as beneficiaries. 6 of the defendants arrested today made their appearance. And Bill Esseley, he said, we are enforcing a zero tolerance policy for criminals who defraud American taxpayers. The defendants arrested this morning who were charged with stealing millions of dollars of healthcare benefits got caught. Now they face years in federal prison, and I hope they serve it. $50 million in losses. HHS talking about it as well. They give us a list of these people. Of course, we saw Lolita Baronilla Menard. How much did she make? $9.1 million. You saw her picture. We'll go through this one in much more detail, but Gladwin Gill, Amalu Gill, 66-year-old purported psychologist, 70-year-old registered nurse, they bilked millions of dollars and more than $5.2 million in this fraudulent claim for hospice. And another one, Medicaid, paid them more than $4 million on fraudulent claims. Millions. This guy, Nita Padit Palma, 76 years old, 3-time convicted healthcare fraudster. How much did he grift off? Looks like $4.8 million. Incredible. Tindi Nabuma, also $3.8 million. All of us are working our butts off out here to make ends meet. And these people just start fake companies and they become millionaires, courtesy of you and me. Thank you for arresting them and putting this to an end. We've also got Aulava Moala, $19 million for her. Bunch of other people involved. She was a director of multiple facilities. $19 million for her. The list goes on and on. Cartmel and more. You get the gist of it. They've all now been charged. And we see the criminal complaint. They were not indicted. They may be indicted in the future. But this is the criminal complaint. FBI agent called Kelly Sullivan was the person who drafted this, got the warrant. They conducted the couple that we saw are these two right here. Gladwin Gill and his wife, Amalu Gill. So we'll spend some time taking a look at just how heinous these people were. It says, I'm an FBI agent. I investigate white-collar crimes. I've worked on a lot of these things since 2020. And just so you know, the purpose of this affidavit is to bring charges for fraud against these two people for the amount of millions of dollars, as we'll see. As described below, the owners and operators of this company called 626 Hospice, they did business as St. Francis Palliative Care. Great. Using the name of St. Francis. No, we would never steal money from the government. We're the St. Francis Center. They had a scheme, Gladwin, Amalu, and their daughter called NG, to defraud Medicare by paying illegal kickbacks for the referral of patients that were not actually dying. Then they submitted more than $5.2 million in fraudulent claims for medically unnecessary or not even provided hospice services. They got $4 million. They then laundered the money and the proceeds and spent fraudulent proceeds on personal expenses like what? Mortgage payments, car payments, international flights, restaurants, personal bills, living lavish like Fani Willis, all in their daughter's name because they had criminal histories. Incredible. Agents interviewed 22 beneficiaries billed to Medicare. And guess what? They went and talked to them. Hey, are you dying? What? No, I'm not dying. I'm not terminally ill at all. Witness interviews also included former employees. They show that both of these two were actively involved in the hospice scheme. Nurses told Amalu that the beneficiaries were not dying, but then she added false medical notes to the chart to justify the need for hospice. She then instructed an employee not to tell the beneficiaries that we were giving them hospice care. All of it fraud. Of the 12 beneficiaries discussed in this affidavit, none of whom were terminally ill, Amalu, the nurse, evaluated and admitted 10 of them for hospice. No, you're dying. What? No, I'm not. You're dying. All right, because I want to get a new car. On August 11th, agents executed a search warrant. They recovered multiple computer images and extensive paper documentation. Notable documents were the following. They had a name with 2 marketers, and they had spreadsheets tracking patients, calculating kickback amounts per patient for each marketer. And I'd love to know who these people are. Who are these people? And why don't they know better? And who's bringing them to them? A ledger noted that check numbers of checks were taken from the business by Dr. Gill. There was a stock purchase agreement and more. Emails to and from the tax preparer, national government services, and other emails. Checks were written for this. Several other emails from a personal account that contained patient medical records. And these people, MC and JC, both of whom were not terminally ill yet at all. So the FBI agent says there's probable cause for this. Based on my review, I also understand that Gladwin, the husband, has multiple felony convictions. Great. So it's perfect. They accepted him into the program. Making and filing a false return or document. He was sentenced to 16 months in jail in state court. Should have been a red flag immediately. He also has convictions for illegal campaign contributions, assault with a firearm, grand theft of property, driving under the influence. So I understand that it's unlikely that he would have been approved. So what did he do? He ran it through his daughter and got her to apply. So according to cooperating witnesses, Gladwin is the owner. Gladwin gave the orders to employees, and he pressured this witness to admit patients to the hospice care, even if they were not dying. He reprimanded CW1 for telling a client that they did provide hospice services. He actually fired her from the company because she told the guy. The fact that Gladwin pressured an employee to admit people to hospice who did not meet the criteria shows he was leading the scheme. As described below, significant portions of income to hospice was ultimately transferred to Gladwin. For example, of the approximately $415,000 transferred to a JP Morgan Chase account, most of the funds were spent on personal expenses. Another $391,000 came from other accounts and went into his accounts. Amalu, the wife, also did the same thing. And based on my review, she pleaded guilty to a felony too. She failed to file an income tax return. She was sentenced for that one. Amalu was also the subject of an overpayment demand and sent a bunch of other bills, said that they falsely would make justifications to put people in hospice care. And they interviewed, it looks like, the daughter. She was the official signatory on this, NG, and involved in managing the company. And I want to see if they talk about any of the funds they spent the money on, saying they also had Medicare enrollment for providers. They say when you sign up to be a provider, you say, I'm not going to commit fraud. They walk through all of the processes on how you actually submit your claim so you can get repaid. They talk about how the care works and what hospice actually does. It's for when you're dying. These people were not dying. And they then established this entire company in order to bilk the government. January 6, 2016, they signed and submitted all these forms. According to bank records, they opened up the business accounts. They submitted declarations of ownership and knew what they were doing, right? They filled out all the things. They had multiple criminal convictions. And they did an interview with one of the workers saying that the medical director also was a referring physician. The primary source of the referrals was from marketers. And when they got caught, the boss tried to intimidate them, the husband firing CW1 back in 2020, saying, don't you reveal the truth of what's happening here. Another witness, CW2, stated that they were paying marketers, and she had overheard nurses complain that patients did not qualify for hospice. She did not issue paychecks to marketers. The checks issued to the marketers were handwritten by the boss and paid them $250 for each visit to sign a certificate of terminal illness. Interviewed some other people of the company and interviewing everybody else who worked there. Many people were named beneficiaries. Investigators interviewed this guy who was 81 years old. He came to the office for arthritis pain, and they said, you're dying. Never diagnosed with anything terminal, but they said, you're dying. And they billed a bunch of people, all these beneficiaries of hospice funding, were not actually dying. And so she chronicles all of that as well. This lady comes in, they checked her blood pressure and said, you're dying. So actually didn't tell her that. They just billed the government for it. So they go through all the beneficiaries, as we see, claims for LU. They name everybody who they grifted off of. And this is sick, actually. Okay, we love our senior citizens here. This is sick. These are people who are stealing money from people who are actually dying and who could use the treatment for end-of-life care. It goes on and on. They analyze the claims, and then they do a financial analysis. They deposited $3.4 million, and there were payments from public and private healthcare plans. The hospice bank account had 133 transfers, and they used them for their own goods, mortgage payments, groceries, restaurants, flights, insurance. There were cash withdrawals as well, over $122,000. 76 transfers that continued on. And they got payments from LA Care and other bank accounts. Then they made other payments to the marketers. So the people who brought them the patients paid 29 Gs, 25 Gs, 22 Gs over there. Found a folder containing spreadsheets of all the people and all the reimbursements. They were tracking their money. And they trace how this all came in. All of this illegal. And so for all of these reasons, there is probable cause to believe that these three, actually the daughter two, committed violations and defrauded Medicare and all of us in America. So they're busted. Happy to see it. Here's more on what went down there, courtesy of KTLA, who was there on scene.
Some here in the Southland.
A carefully choreographed effort to shut down fraudsters who have been at it for an earliest recollection from law enforcement around 2018.
8 healthcare workers, including nurses, a chiropractor, and psychologist who allegedly billed taxpayers millions of dollars under the guise of serving the terminally ill who weren't sick at all. Officials claim they ran fraudulent hospice care facilities that drained Medicare by using individuals who didn't have terminal illnesses as beneficiaries.
We are announcing charges against 15 separate individuals who engaged in healthcare fraud, resulting in losses close to $60 million.
Fraudulent money.
Crazy numbers, and they're stealing from people who could actually use it. Now, this was one of the guys who was ultimately arrested. We had Colin Rugg, I believe, posted this one, and this is a guy who is in LA who was covering this story, I think, from CBS News, explaining what was going down as this guy, one of the Gills, was being raided.
You have a statement? You have anything to say?
That looks like Amalu.
All right, so I'm on the scene of a FBI-led raid of a home owned by a husband and wife, psychologist and a nurse who the FBI says ran a fraudulent hospice for years, racking up over $7 million in fraudulent payments. I don't know if you can get a sense, but
nice house.
We are in a very, very nice part of town.
Yep.
We're in the city of San Dimas, in a very hilly area. Homes are all behind gates, and essentially hidden behind all of this greenery here. This is a very private, exclusive area. You wonder where the money from hospice fraud goes.
We paid for it, yeah.
Some of it goes to funding a certain lifestyle.
Ridiculous.
See one arrest. FBI has one person, a man, in custody. This is the owner of an alleged fraudulent hospice. This would probably be, I guess, the psychologist. And I see further back a woman being escorted as well. I see two people. I see a few people being escorted, actually. I think I've seen maybe 4. 5? Anyway, we're seeing a number of people being escorted out under arrest by the FBI agents here. Not entirely clear who's who, but we do know that 2 of the targets included a husband and wife team, husband a psychologist and wife a nurse, who they say ran a fraudulent hospice for many years. The FBI says that this hospice racked up over $7 million in fraudulent payments, and that they had a death rate of 2.8%, which is extraordinarily low by any metrics that the state or the federal government have. Those are telltale signs of a fraudulent hospice. This is part of a larger operation today. The FBI has a number of cases and a number of arrests across LA. And where we are right now is about an hour or so away from the cluster of hospices, including the one that the husband and wife owned.
Amazing. They live in $1 million mansions after they steal money from senior citizens who could actually use some funding for end-of-life care so they're not dying in a horrific way and left alone. But they take it so that they can go live lavish, and now they're going to jail. I hope every one of them who did this is found and they all go to jail. Here was more with, I think, a clip from Mehmet Oz, who is actually out there himself.
Here's another arrest down in Topanga Hospice, and here they were paying kickbacks to the patients, giving them $600 a month in an envelope. That's because they were getting reimbursed from the feds about $6,000 a month. Now, they are also paying marketers to find seniors and take their Medicare card. They bilked the government for about $8 million, not eligible, and they were not terminally ill.
The name of this endeavor is Project Never Say Die, because the folks who are in the nursing and the hospice facilities owned by this couple and their family don't seem to ever pass away.
Amazing. No one dies.
So the feds are here for a reason. California was giving out thousands of hospice licenses to people who are unqualified, no oversight, and of course taxpayers have been paying for it ever since.
Yep, and they made political donations, I'm sure, right back to the same Democrats who gave them their licenses. It's all a giant kleptocracy, and they all belong in jail. I'm happy to see that it's happening. Hopefully, there is much more to come. J.D. Vance's fraud task force, now sounding like it's in full swing, will be here to continue to cover these monsters as they get locked up, hopefully, for a very long time, dispossessed of all of their possessions, so they can return that money back to the government where it belongs, so that actual seniors who need the care can get it, not to fund the lavish lifestyle of these criminals. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right. What a lovely Friday it has been, my friends. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about today. We had some good news. We had Fulton County and the battle over the pallets full of ballots that have been seized by the FBI. DOJ now saying, we're done negotiating with you, okay? Your requests for more information are denied. They had a meet and confer to get more information, but the DOJ declined to supply any more information to them. They sent a burner of a reply over to the judge, and they said, we have rejected your demands, and we've got 11th Circuit case law that supports our arguments. And judge, your job now is to dismiss this case, Case is now handed back off to another judge. We'll see what he says about it. We heard from Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones out in Georgia, who said that Fulton County is one noxious odor after another. Lieutenant Governor candidate called Greg Doolazal, who's a current senator out there, also saying the same, that I've been fighting for this for a long time. Hopefully we get some justice. Then we turned our attention to ActBlue, and we saw, my goodness, they got advised by their lawyers, Regina did right here, that Regina, you might be in big trouble here. You should correct your record and explain to Congress that you actually lied to them. In a 2023 letter, she says, I didn't lie about anything. You're the liars. And she fired her law firm. Then it caused a cascade of other lawyers inside ActBlue to all resign and abandon ship as the ship now comes under federal scrutiny. We saw that there's a dark money dragnet that the Democrats are creating to funnel around billions of dollars from their coward scumbag billionaires who are too weak and pathetic to actually stand for the causes they believe in. They may have billions of dollars, but they've got no balls at all, and it's pathetic. So we see that they're moving billions around in order to elect their candidates, who then, of course, will pass laws that are good for the billionaires. And they say it's good for the people. All a giant scam. We know that Congress is looking into it. Chip Roy wants answers. Todd Blanche says it's going to be the focus of the new DOJ. We'll see. And the investigations continued. Then we turned our attention to monsters who steal money from senior citizens who are literally dying so that they can go live lavish in Beverly Hills or whatever. Now they're being arrested. We saw a bunch of them listed here. All of these people now in custody, except a couple of them. Hopefully they've picked them up since this was all published. Operation Never Say Die. They were saying people were dying, took their Medicaid cards, billed the government for millions of dollars, and then reported, actually, they didn't die. Oops, sorry about that. But don't you like my new swimming pool? Now they're in jail, and hopefully they stay there for a very long time, including this guy and his wife and daughter and these people too. And so it's been a beautiful Friday. Thank you for being here and being with us. Thank you for subscribing on the channel, wherever it is you're watching us. Thank you so much for your liking the video and for inviting everyone you've ever known in your entire life to come and join us. That way we can see them here too. But I saw some great donos and super chats come in, my friends. Thank you so much for the love and for supporting our work here, wherever it is you're watching us. Hey, Viva rated us. Man, shout out to Viva. What a stand-up guy. He had Joe Kent on his show the other day. Don't know if you saw that. Hell yeah, this is a real photo. Remember this one from Fani Willis when she jumped in the swimming pool and caused that tsunami that almost took out half the eastern seaboard? Horrific. It's called the Fani-ami. Big one. We remember that one. It's a real photo, pretty sure. Looks like her. And it would cause that type of damage for sure. Really bad one. So thank you for that. Hey, Vaughn McCurry. Welcome aboard, Vaughn and McCurry. For our members, we had a very early members-only morning stream because we took Mama around DC. Mama G was here with us, helping us get settled in. And we even went to the Supreme Court. And let me share this photo with you. Right outside the Supreme Court. We took Mama G to the Supreme Court today. And it was great. Walked right in there. We saw some of the cherry blossoms. And where is a good photo? Yeah, here's one. Here's your boy, my beautiful wife, and my mama at the Supreme Court. So for our new members, we were early today. And here's what this one looks like over from SCOTUS. Right outside the court. A little bit blurry. Don't know if it's going to resolve there. That was us, Mama, my beautiful wife, outside the Supreme Court today. Pretty great. Or inside the Supreme Court today. And so we had a great time. So members, that's why we were early. And thank you for joining us extra early this morning. We had a great time bouncing around DC. Shout out to Mama G. She's flying back to Arizona right now. We miss her and we love her. We had a great time together. Rick D, what's up? First high-res images from Artemis on the way to the moon. And members, we'll see you tomorrow morning for our Saturday stream back at the regular time. Rick D, first high-res images from Artemis on the way to the moon. Man, look at those. Wow, I think I saw that photo. It's like a big deal, right? Because the sun is behind the Earth, not in front of the Earth. And so you get to see, actually, I think the concept was you get to see some stars behind the Earth. I think you can see them. Maybe they're not coming through exactly, but yeah, some stars behind the Earth. Or is that just crap on my screen? I don't know. But pretty amazing. Shout out to our astronauts. Yeah, see, there's some stuff behind it. Wild. It's round. It looks round. Doesn't look flat, which is a relief. Oof. Thank you, Rick. Hey, Rob, more fraud arrests in Minnesota. This time they got judges? All right, we'll have to save that for tomorrow there, Rick. Thank you for sending that one in. That sounds like a good Saturday stream topic. Rick D, helping with the show prep. We appreciate you. Yeah, these photos are amazing. I mean, and they're going to the moon. So shout out to America. We're going to conquer the moon, and we're going to conquer outer space. We already have Starlink, reusable rockets. American ingenuity is not over yet. We have a great country. We have a lot of geniuses here. We met an engineer at the Supreme Court today. Met him and his father, who said they watched the channel. Shout out to Bert and his boy. We got the best engineers. We're going to continue to conquer even the damn moon, okay? China, so eat it. So shout out, Rick D. Thank you for that. We'll come back on that one in the morning. Not a Fed. KBJ has inspired me to sue Japan. You should. You should. You should go over there, steal a wallet, and then demand citizenship in Japan. I'm in your jail, so obviously I'm a citizen. My Supreme Court judge, who's an idiot, told me that. My son was born by my American wife while I was active duty there, subject to the jurisdiction of Japan as well as U.S. laws and the UCMJ. Indeed, I would have been arrested by Japanese authorities for stealing a wallet. Indeed, you would have. I want reparations from Japan for raising my Japanese son for the last 12 years. Wish me luck. Thanks, KBJ. That's outstanding. Just make sure you have the clip on your phone so you can tell the Japanese police officers it's real. She said it. Okay, so sorry. I have birthright citizenship here. Hilarious, not a Fed. Thank you for your service, my man, in the military. Shout out to your boy. I guess we can all just go over there and start stealing wallets, and suddenly we're citizens in Japan. Outstanding. Hey, Viva, man. Shout out to Viva. So if you're not watching Viva, he's right next door on YouTube and on Rumble. Thank you, Viva, for rating us, sending some friends over here from Rumble. We appreciate that. Viva just had on Joe Kent, Robert Barnes, and Viva chatting with Joe. Viva asked some tough questions, and it was a great interview. Shout out, Viva. Hopefully you're doing well, my man. We'll be good to connect very soon. ZG, what's up, ZG? What's up, ZG? You had eye surgery. It went well so far. Praying this gives great distance vision and only need readers after. Thanks for the prayers, sweet friends. Shout out. Prayers up, ZG. 2017. Thanks for watching on Rumble, being a membo over there. Really glad it went well. And I'm hopeful that you're recovering and you're going to see better than ever. And you're not even going to need those glasses. Maybe not even those readers. It's going to be 20/20 perfect vision. And you're going to see everything with crystal clear precision. Thank you for that, ZG. Glad it went well. And thanks for saying what's up. Hey, Bill Dozer, happy Good Friday, y'all. He suffered so that our sins may be forgiven, and he is seated at the right hand of the Father. Christ is King, from Bill Dozer. Man, I love that. Bill Dozer in the house. Amen. And have a blessed Good Friday, my friends. Very important day. The holiest of the days are here upon us. And very soon, he will be risen. We're looking forward to that. Bill Dozer, thank you, my man. And happy Friday to you. And happy Good Friday. Shiloh, what's up? 6 months as a membo. Says hi. Hi, Shiloh. Thank you for being here for 6 months. And thank you for the very nice and pithy salutation. We appreciate it. Hello right back to you. Thank you, Shiloh. Thanks for being here 6 months. 3 more. We got a full term. Hey, Thinker for Life. This channel inspires me to help others see the facts shared here. That's awesome. I love that. I appreciate it. However, we do need to find a way to reach out to people beyond the internet and on person with tact, grace, and humility. Yeah, I was thinking a lot about that on Holy Thursday. Humility. That was pounding around in my brain because, you know, Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. Peter objected to it. And he said, I'm already washed. I'm already clean. And Jesus told Peter, there is no inheritance from me if I do not wash your feet. And he said, so as a master, you call me teacher. And so if a master and a teacher can wash your feet, this is a model for you. Go out and do it. I thought, man, that's really, Jesus is amazing. So I thought, man, I need to have some more of that going on in my life. I need to wash some more feet out there, you know? So thank you, Thinker for Life. I think that's brilliant. And I appreciate that. And I like tact, grace, and humility. I often say faith, humility, and love. Faith, humility, and love. Faith, humility, and love. So when I start to get worked up or something, and I get all agitated, it's like faith, humility, and love. Faith, humility, and love. And then things kind of calm back down, and we realize that it's really about those things. And we can, always, I think, aspire to do better on that. Thank you, Thinker for Life. Inspiration is what we need. Hey, Jim tells you, man, amazing. Jim, I think I said I was going to raid you the other day, and then I forgot. I get all worked up, and I just forgot. So if you're doing it tonight, yes, you're doing it tonight. So we'll do it tonight for sure. Maybe I did it. I can't remember. I couldn't remember after. I'm like, shoot, did I raid Jim? So happy to do it, Jim. Really glad that you're continuing to pump out content. Always good to do it. Thank you so much for the raids. It has really helped me add subs. I can only do the early starts 2 to 3 days a week, depending on grandkids and the schedule. I have it set up for today. If you could possibly raid again, and thank you. Happy to do that, Jim. Yeah, happy to send those out. And of course, if we have other amazing watcher friends in the community, happy to share the love around. And I try to do it, but the people that we normally would send to are just not usually streaming at this time. Let me see. Jim tells you. You got it up? You got it up. All right, so let me set it up right now, just so I don't forget. It's done. So, friends, you'll be sent over to Jim Tells You. Politics, breaking news, and fun. If you enjoy it, stick around. If you don't, bounce on out of there. But give it a shot. Jim Tells You. Thank you, my man. Hopefully you have a great stream and a lovely Friday, and you cover some good stuff over there, delivering truth and fun and frivolity. Hey, Data. Man, I really like Data from The Next Generation. Jean-Luc Picard. He was formidable, man, especially when he got turned into a Borg. Data as Borg, it's rough. Hey, Data, thank you for the dono. Our 10 membos coming in. Delay is obvious over on Rumble. We got Adboa, Aldia. We got Marley in the house. John McGarvey. Mr. Furley. What's up, ZG? We got Guts and Blood. Nice. Angel Fire and Neuro D. Modding the fort down for us over there as well. Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Data 12. Thanks for watching on Rumble and for bringing in some new friends over on the Rumbles. We appreciate that. And happy Friday to you. Psychological Projectionist. The anti-American party has foreign donors. Big surprise. I know, shocking, right? Even Chip Rose like, oh no, wow. Who would have thought? It's been going on for years. Obama did it, and he had like a small little FEC problem. No, Data is an android. He's not like Spock. Spock is a Vulcan. Spock, has to tell the truth. Although I think he's like only half Vulcan, right? Officially. But Data, Data's an android. And he gets that emotion chip in one of the movies. Maybe I should make Alexis watch all the Star Trek movies. I don't know if she's watching right now, but those are pretty good. Who else but John? Whoa. Hey, good to see you, John McGarvey in the house. Gifting a membo to Mindy Shelby. Thank you, John, for doing that and for modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly around here. Yeah, shout out to Data once again. Even more friends, Data? Gosh, you're the best android we've ever seen. Hey, Bill Dozer, welcome. Monica Palmer, good to see you. Common Sense. Tulip McGroin is here. Information Warlord, what's up? Xizzy, we got Liz Burgess. Just me again and again. Welcome. The Real Capone. We got Jax and Bill Dozer saying thank you to Data 12. Thank you, Data 12, for that. Man, we appreciate you. Thank you so much again for bringing in more membos. Hey, Vrooman. Thank you for the delightful way you present the ways bad people do terrible things. Thank you for that, Vrooman. We do a lot of that, I know. It is delightful how we expose bad people doing terrible things. We need to know, and at least you make it go down with a spoonful of sugar. I know. Otherwise, we would just, rage, just rage. So we have to have a little bit of fun here. But it is outrageous. It is enraging. So, Baruman, my friend, thank you for being here. It's a very symbiotic thing that happens here. We get to share these maddening things together. And I think, what's the phrase? Like misery. What's the word? Something shared is something. I can't remember what it is. But we get to commiserate, maybe is another way to say it. We get to commiserate together in a fun way and have some fun. And so thank you, Varuman. It does go down with a spoonful of sugar. You guys make it a lot easier too. So thank you for that. King of Biltong. This isn't just biltong. It's premium meat, real craftsmanship, and clean ingredients, all made in-house and sold direct. Welcome to BiltongUSA.com. Use code Robert and you'll save 10% off at checkout and get some delicious meat delivered right to your door. One old guy, what's up? Bill and Ted. San Dimas High rules. Is that from Billy Madison? Was it San Dimas High? San Dimas High rules. Is that Billy Madison? Wild Stallions, be excellent to each other and party on, dude. Party on, Wayne. Party on, dude. Party on, Garth. Wayne's World. Great film also. Great film. Formative film. Shout out. Thank you for those, one old guy. I remember some of those. Bill and Ted, that was San Dimas High? I thought that was Billy Madison. Or was that a play on Bill and Ted? I have to think that one over. I've seen Billy Madison maybe 100 times, probably. Michelle, you are the best. Michelle, you are the best. You know, the hospice fraud infuriates me. My husband died on hospice, and I can tell you the rules and paperwork involved are extensive. Oversight, arrest, convictions, jail. Did I mention how angry I am about this? Yeah, I mean, what kind of a sick person steals from autistic kids, steals from senior citizens, steals from the most vulnerable amongst us, right? You judge a society, you judge a person by how they treat the most vulnerable in their society. These people are total scum, okay? Come steal from me, break into my car, whatever. That's fine. It's not fine. You're still scum. But I can handle it. You know, I can figure it out. Stealing from seniors who are literally on their deathbed so that you can go get a new car and then you drive around like nothing is wrong. You're just a sick person through and through. Michelle, I'm with you on that. I don't know where these people came from. I don't know if they're, all of them are Americans or what, but if they're not, they should be deported as well. Michelle, after they serve 40 years in prison. G-Gum! Hey, thank you, G-Gum. That's your boy, Viva, and me. We were downtown Phoenix when we took that photo. G-Gum, thank you for that. What a cool photo. Man, Viva's amazing. Got to spend some good time with Viva during the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Which is, somber time, but got to hang out with Viva. He's a real good dude, super authentic, and we appreciate all his work. He asks good questions. He's right next door. And we're in good company. Thank you for that, G-Gum. We love Viva. Right next door. Make sure you're checking his videos out. And good interview with Joe Kent. Check it out. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. He has some hard questions. Rob, I have shoulder cuff surgery. I'm having shoulder cuff surgery on Tuesday. Would love and appreciate prayers. Prayers up for you, Rob. Yeah, hopefully it goes well. You're going to be pitching baseballs, swinging golf clubs, doing pull-ups in no time. Shoulder cuff surgery. Hopefully it goes well. Prayers up for the doctors. Prayers up for your speedy recovery. You're going to have a lot of energetic fortitude and spiritual health coming into that room. You're going to walk out, emerge a new man. Rob, good to see you. Rick D. As Mila said, this is the President Trump the media refuses to show. It's a 50-second clip. Let me see if I can open that up. We'll come back to that. Thank you, Rick D. This is the Trump that media refuses to show. It's a 50-second clip. Rick D, you rock. Been there before. We'll see you very soon. Been there before. We had a good member stream this morning talking about the fallout from Pam Bondi from this morning. Get a good stream. Extra early. It was good. Will Crump, what's up? Don't these corrupt Democrats realize the more they fight to hide those records, the guiltier they make themselves look? Not looking good for Big Fani. Yeah, and they brought out the biggest firearms that they have on their side, the lawyers, Norm Eisen, Abby Lowell, in order to prevent the truth from coming out. All hands on deck. It's red alert for them, since we're on the Star Trek bend right now. Red alert. Shields up. They're investigating election fraud. Very nervous about the truth coming out. Thank you, Will. I don't think they care. I mean, who's going to hold them accountable? Media's not. No one's going to. Everyone just calls it, this is political retribution. This is unprecedented. Seizure of election ballots. No one's ever seen this before. Blah, blah, blah. So it's now just for survival, and they can do basically, whatever they want unless they get indicted. Then they have to face a new set of music. Hey, what's up? Will Crump and Neuro D. Neuro D, thank you. Modding the fort down for us. Jim didn't go live until 10 p.m. Don't feel bad, Rob. Oh, And happy Easter. Happy Easter, Neuro D. Amazing. Yeah, so Jim, I think I did miss it that time then. Thank you, Neuro D. Thanks for modding the fort down for us, and happy Easter right back at you. And we'll hopefully see you tomorrow too. Been there before. What's up? Hey, been there. Thank you for upgrading your membership. Thank you for doing that. Sending a little bit more love our way. We appreciate that one. Hey, Rick D. Yes, Spock's father was Vulcan and his mother was a human from Earth. That's right. Yeah. I remember that. That's why he has a little bit of that rage that comes out, because he's not pure Vulcan, but he still has to tell the truth. Spock, are you out of your Vulcan mind? Great line. Great line. Yeah, misery loves company. It was that, but there was like something. Misery shared is misery halved, I think. That's what it is. Misery shared is misery halved. Often paired as a shared sorrow is half a sorrow, right? A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. Because you're sharing it with somebody, it's not as bad. But what we do here is not misery, what we do here is not sorrow per se. It's accountability and transparency. But it is enraging. So enraging stories shared are enraging. Half was kind of, it doesn't really work that well. Thank you for that, one old guy. Rick D, the stats I want to see from the hospice fraud is how many legitimate patients got denied because their treatment would cost the fraudsters too much. It is beyond infuriating. Man, that's such a great point, Rick D. Yeah, they only took the people to whom they did not have to provide services. And if they did provide services to somebody, what kind of services did they get? They just letting old people just die out alone? And just in misery. Sick, dude. It's so sick. I hope they get every single thing that is coming to them. One old guy. I was born in the same summer that Bryan Adams bought his first real 6-string at the 5 and dime. He played until his fingers bled. What year was I born? Bryan Adams, first real 6-string at the 5 and dime. I don't even really know what that is. 5 and dime? You were born in 1934. I don't know. Is that close? How old is that? 90 years old ish, give or take. 89, 88. How old? I don't know. One old guy. You have to answer that now for us because we all don't know. Hey, what's up, senorita? Good to see you. I'm 3 months before I've been a membo for 1 year. Hey, thank you, senorita. 1 year. So we got 9 months. We got full baby. 3 more. Then we'll have a full baby here. We already have a full baby. We'll have one happy anniversary, senorita. Amazing. You brighten my day. Hey, thank you so much. You do too, senorita. I really enjoy our time together. We have a lot of fun. I think we learned some stuff, and we get to connect and build, a deeper community. We're grateful. Congrats on the Understruction baby, Gouveia. Coming soon. Yeah, coming soon. Alexis is getting, baby's getting bigger every day. We're excited about it. Thank you, senorita. Thank you for the nice dono, for the very nice compliment. And the feeling is mutual, so thank you so much. Will Crump, what are the odds Fulton County gets the records back? I mean, under traditional procedure, like low, 5% maybe, very low. Again, it's like getting the murder weapon back. That would never happen. This is an election case, and the whole thing out of Fulton is just disgusting and perverted. So, I don't know, maybe 30%? You'd bump that number up. But I think the judge, I think what we can intimate from the panic from Norm Eisen and from Abby Lowell and all of this kind of, we demand and more information and all of that, is they probably think that it went bad. And I really thought that the case law that they cited today was very persuasive. So I would say it's low. Yeah. Really, Rob? You've never heard the song Summer of 69? I have heard it. I just wouldn't have been able to name it. So yeah, Summer of 69. Yeah, that's a good song, actually. That is a good song. But I wouldn't have been able to name it. Bryan Adams, Bryan Adams, he's a musician. Okay. But I'm not really good with pop culture or names of music or really a lot of pop culture things. But that is a great song. Rick D, thank you for that. And let's make sure we're not missing your Trump comment. Yeah, man. Yeah, this is the president. And where was this from? Was this from anything recent? February 2026, Trump is visiting an injured soldier. Don't know the context of this, but here's this short clip.
This is to certify that the President of the United States of America has awarded the Purple Heart, established by General George Washington at Newburgh, New York, August 7th, 1782, to Master Sergeant Clinton D. Trial, United States Marine Corps, for wounds received in action on January 12th, 2019 in Afghanistan.
I'm going to take this myself. I'm going to see, let me see it the best way. I think I have it here. I think I have a good
Amazing, man. Shout out to that man and his family. Prayers up.
That is a great, that is a great, this is we appreciate it. It's an honor. Beautiful family.
Amazing. Thank you, Rick D. Yeah, they don't ever share those nice moments. They just say that he's, having a fit over something and this dictatorship, fascism, whatever. But I think Trump, if they got to know him and actually opened up for the possibility of getting to know him, they'd have a different opinion if they could set aside their hatred of anything that's good for America, ultimately. So, friends, thank you for that, Rick D. Thank you for sending that one in. Will Crump, the summer of 65, Bryan Adams. I think it was 69, right? Summer of 69. Amazing. Good song. It is a good song. I know that song. All right, friends, thank you so much for sending all of those comments in. Great comments and a lot of fun. And thank you, as always, for your support. Hey, what's going on, Sadie? Yeah, great stream over on Locals, and prayers up for Mama G in her travels. Thank you for saying that, Sadie. Very nice of you to do that. And she's probably... time is it over there? Yeah, she's probably getting close to landing pretty soon. So hopefully she had a beautiful flight out there, back home. We miss Mama already. But let's see if we got any comments on X, and then we'll wrap it up on the night and come back for Membos tomorrow morning on Saturday. Can't wait to see you. Hey, Smoky Mountain Sam. What's up, Smoky Mountain? Great listen, man. Thank you, Smoky Mountain. Thanks for saying that. Great to see you over on X. Guernica. In 2012, I worked at a call center that did Democrat fundraising. Call center company would buy lists from Democrats, call the list for donations, and call center kept 100% of the revenue. We were instructed to use very specific language to avoid legal. Seems shady. Changed my views. Yeah, that's interesting. I believe that. It's all about the list. That's why ActBlue is in big trouble, because if that goes down, they have the list of everything, right? Hey, it's Jesus coming down. And is he going to wash the feet? We are the show. Okay, this one's even better. Some of you need to listen. You know who you are. Wash the feet. Thank you, B. Torn. Jesus rocks. Hey, what's going on? This one, Doug Ross. Hey, great work, Robert. Let me make sure we give this a little like over here. We got Doug Ross. Great work, Robert. I see more trouble in ActBlue's future. Illustrated timelines in the New York Times reporting here. DirectorBlue.substack. Fake donors, foreign cash, and a cover-up. ActBlue Illustrated. ActBlue's own lawyers warned them. They said, F it. Man, nice comment. Yeah, shout out. We'll check that out. Open that link up. Thank you, Doug Ross, for the great comment. Looks like a good link over there, too. Hey, we're following you already. Hey, Neuro D. Thank you, Neuro D. Check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Great place to follow us. Of course, you can also join up on YouTube, and we'll see you tomorrow morning on the members only stream. We've got a couple. Hey, thank you, friends. One old guy. Shout out to all the Gen Xers, baby. We rock. We love our Gen Xers. 100%. But you didn't tell us. What year were you born? The summer of 69? Is that the answer? One old guy? Great to see you. Thanks again, one old guy. Number one in the chat and a nice dono. Thank you, one old guy, for the great comments today. Gary Hankins. What's up, Gary? Amazing. Thank you for signing up. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll have a great Saturday show. Tweak, a late moving day pizza, Rob. Hope you like DC. Well, we're going out for hamburgers and milkshakes tonight. Alexis said, I want a hamburger and a milkshake. I said, you got it, baby. I guess that's okay. I have to go have a hamburger and milkshake. I guess we can do that. I love these milkshakes here, too. They're great. I misunderstood the lyrics. It's 69, not 65. My bad. It's okay. Welcome. 65, it sounds Summer of 65. Not as bad. It's not bad. I think it could work. Yeah, it's not bad. Hey, Tweak, a late moving day pizza. Thank you, Tweak, for the dono, man. We appreciate that. Yeah, so we'll do that tomorrow. We love pizza here also. We love pizza. Pizza, burgers, milkshakes, all the things you should not eat. But awesome, Tweak. Thank you, my man. Good to see you again. It's been a little while. Thank you for saying what's up. Thank you for the dono. Hopefully you're doing well over there in Europe. And we appreciate you joining us. But friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Thank you for joining us, and happy Friday and a blessed Good Friday. We are, of course, going to pause here for the week. It's been a lovely stream and a lovely week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your support. Thanks for liking the video on the way out. If you're on YouTube, we're going to send you over to Jim Tells You. Check out his channel. See what you think. Stick around if you like it. Otherwise, we're coming back on Monday. One old guy. Thank you, one old guy, for squeezing this dono in here at the end. Says, Christ has risen. We are waiting for his return. Jesus never was humble when he called out evil and hypocrisy and boldly proclaimed his Father's kingdom. Look at that comment from one old guy. Easter Sunday coming soon, and we're looking forward to celebrating the return of Jesus. One old guy, thanks once again for the dono and for the nice message as we close up the stream. What a lovely way to end it. So friends, thank you for being here. I hope that the rest of your weekend is amazing. If we don't see you tomorrow on the member stream, we'll of course be back on Monday. We'll get into it again. And before we close out, want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. Big thank yous to Donut Mind Me, John in the house. We got Muffin Rando. We got K-Bean, Carrie B. We got Neuro D, Janek and Dog Digger, Geegum Geegum, Elliot, Just Rhonda. Keeping things nice and orderly around here. And my friends, thank you for being here and for joining us for all the things that we go through. We're going to pause for just a few short days. We're going to come back on Monday and get into it again. And as always, in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a beautiful weekend. Have a very happy Easter. We'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye and be well.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we exposed corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers, shining the light. Watching the watchers, defending what's right. Watching the watchers, stay each night together and live it.